Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Tales of Perseverance, Resilience and Hope. My name is Nicole Walker and I'm the Senior Alumni Engagement Manager here at Griffith, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we're all located today. I'm here today on the Yugambeh lands, and I pay my respect to owners past, present and emerging. Today's session is being recorded and you'll receive an email when it's live. We also have a stenographer providing live captions, so we'll post a link into the chat, so you can click on that if you'd like to follow along with those. We're going to chat to our panel members today for about 40 minutes and then open it up for live questions. So feel free to type your questions in as you think of them throughout the session, and we'll get them to them later on. We're honoured to be joined by three outstanding Griffith graduates today, Brianna, Bonnie and Sarah. I'm going to give each of our speakers some time to introduce themselves and then we'll delve into some group questions. So first we're going to go Brianna Casey, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Foodbank Australia, a position that she's held for 8 years. Now, Brianna, we'd love to hear about how you first came to study at Griffith University. It's a bit of a mouthful. You did a Bachelor of Science, Australian Environmental Studies with a triple major, planning, social policy, pollution and health. So we'd love to hear how you made your way, from there to your current position where your organisation alone sourced 92 million meals, and that was just last year alone. So Brianna, I ask you to unmute yourself and we'd love to hear a bit more about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I am joining from beautiful Darug country today and wish to pay my respects to elders past and present, and anyone who is joining us today of an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander background. Welcome all. It's an absolute pleasure to be coming home to Griffith. I actually grew up in Byron Bay on the northern rivers of New South Wales at a time where it wasn't famous for celebrity spotting and the various linen wearing lovers that hang out in Byron Bay. It was very much a time where Byron Bay was transitioning from a small coastal village to something that was more akin to being overdeveloped and potentially facing development. And for me, growing up in a coastal area surrounded by natural beauty, I had a natural draw towards sustainability. And also my grandparents were on a farm up in Bangalow in the hills behind Byron Bay. So for me, sustainable agriculture and farming and rural and regional communities more broadly was something not only that I felt really connected to, but also fascinated by. So it wasn't a difficult choice for me when Griffith was actually introducing an environmental science degree to get behind that and to really dive in, boots and all. And I actually lived on campus at Nathan campus and did all three of my 3 years of uni on campus, which I'm sure my body will show signs of eventually, if not sooner. And for me, that particular degree was about allowing a natural curiosity around environmental science to really be explored through the lens of planning. And that was really important to me because I felt like Byron Bay was a town where town planning rules were actually going to make or break the success of the town itself, but also the way that the community felt connected to it or not. From a pollution and health point of view, that was also a really obvious one for me in terms of what was going on in terms of environmental health practices. And in terms of social policy, I must confess at high school, I had no idea what it meant. Whereas once I dived into the degree, I really felt this draw towards social policy and social justice issues. So when I graduated, it seemed like a really natural fit for me to join Queensland Farmers Federation in an environment policy role. I have to say a lot of my colleagues and alumni who graduated at the same point did not agree with nor see the sense in that, and certainly there were a lot of assumptions about farmers and farming, and there was an assumption that I had gone from an environment where I was learning more about farming and agriculture to an environment where I wasn't necessarily going to be able to apply those skills. But quite the contrary, I passionately believe that Australia has some of the best farmers in the world. It was a true joy for me to be CEO of Queensland Farmers Federation, and the way that came about, I originally joined Queensland Farmers as an environment policy officer, looking into really contentious issues of the day, land clearing laws in Queensland, runoff to the Great Barrier Reef, chemical use, you name the sustainability issue. And when I was 23, we actually had a quite significant change in our board and change in CEO, and I was asked to keep the CEO seat warm while they recruited, and I kept that seat very warm for about 8 years, and then came down to New South Wales Farmers, also working on sustainability policy, but also rural affairs policy. So that real love of social policy around rural mental health and how farmers and rural and regional communities operate and function. I also spent 3 years at Australian Childcare Alliance New South Wales as their CEO in a policy and advocacy role, very much through the lens of someone as a single mother of 2 young children who were in long daycare at the time. I was seeing that as the lens of a consumer, but also as someone who could really see gaps around access to affordable, high quality education and care. And it was that piece around understanding vulnerable communities and vulnerable cohorts that really led me to, I think, probably the highlight of my career, which is the last 8 years at Foodbank Australia. As a food relief organisation, I couldn't be prouder of the role that we play in making food one less thing for people to worry about. And I think anyone who has seen firsthand what's going on with the cost of living crisis, what happened with the Black Summer bushfires, what happened throughout COVID, and the multitude of natural disasters we've seen in the last few years, will know that right now it doesn't take much for the household budget to be tipped into a place where income and expenditure aren't balancing. And I think for many, it would be a shock to know that Foodbank nationally, through our wonderful state and territory food banks, are providing food relief to more than 1 million people a month. As was said at the intro, 92 million meals sourced in the last 12 months alone. So the need in the community is huge, but I have to say, having that background in environmental science has been a really fundamental contributor to my career, because that sustainability message and that alignment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals has been really strong. And if we look at what one of the biggest challenges we confront, not only as a nation, but as the globe, is around food loss and waste. It is a $36.6 billion problem in this country. And if we want to do something about climate change, if we want to contribute to sustainability, it starts in our own homes, in our own fridges, in our own pantries. We've got lots to do. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Brianna. I look forward to hearing more from you soon, Brianna. Before we do that, though, we're going to now hand over to Bonnie Hancock to give us a short bio of how she first came to Griffith University to study dietetics, and then went to spend 8 months just recently sea paddling almost 13,000 kilometres around Australia's coastline. So to get a sense of that epic journey, we've got a short video that we'll just quickly play for you for 90 seconds, and then Bonnie will share some more of her story.
If you get too wet, you get too cold, your body will stop functioning, it will shut down the extremities, you lose motor function, you lose the ability, you die.
What I'm realising now is there are lots of dangers on this trip.
Yeah, it's way back there behind us now.
First instinct was great white because it was so big and I saw like the belly underneath it. In a couple of people who have paddled us around Australia before, they've told stories of crocodiles stalking them for a couple of 100 kilometres.
I think I've been paddling for 6 days straight.
I'm not scared of Bonnie quitting. I'm scared that Bonnie doesn't want to stop. She does too much.
Bonnie, are you okay?
Once I set my mind to something, and my husband knows this, I will do whatever it takes to get there.
Thanks so much, guys.
Just in so much pain. So painful.
Fucking not going anywhere. We're borderline going backwards.
Getting chased by a seal. I don't know if it was getting territorial.
It's relief, it's not happiness. It's like emptiness, laying on the ground, thank God, relief, and knowing you've got to do it the next day.
Hi, I'll start. Thank you so much, and I apologise if anyone is eating their lunch during this webinar for that little bit of seasickness and vomiting there. lovely to be with you all. That was my 8-month paddle around Australia, which I commenced in December of 2021, right in COVID was still happening right around the world, through to August 2022. But I want to take you back. I found a piece of paper a little while ago, and it was something I'd scrawled when I was 12 years old. And it said, I want to be an Olympian or an Iron Woman or a dietitian. And I was very ambitious as a 12-year-old. I have sisters, so I was very competitive, so I knew my goals. I'm so fortunate that I ended up making 2 of those things come true. And thanks to Griffith, I was able to graduate in 2014 with a Bachelor of Nutrition and Dietetics. I did sports camps growing up in a whole bunch of areas in regional New South Wales. I grew up in the beautiful little town of Sawtell in Coffs Harbour. And I was inspired listening to the nutritionists and dietitian teach us about how we could fuel our body as athletes. I was a surf lifesaver, but participated in many different sports, which I think is really important at that age. At 12 years old, I remember watching Carla Gilbert in the Meadow Lee series in the golden days of surf lifesaving. You remember Grant Kenny and Trevor Hendy and all of those names. And she would run around at Surfers Paradise in her Surfers Paradise cap, and I just wanted to be Carla. So at 17, I packed up my car, I moved to the Gold Coast, I enrolled in Griffith, and I became a professional Iron Woman at 17 by making the Nutrigrain Iron Woman series. I continued to compete for around 8 years professionally. In that time, I began working as a dietitian, at first in bariatric clinics and then into private GP clinics, which I still continue to this day and absolutely love. I always thought I would work in sports dietetics, but it's, you know, your everyday stories, people who have been diagnosed with diabetes, heart conditions, gut health. That's what really drives me. That's what I'm really passionate about is helping people with whatever their health goals are. And, you know, the importance of nutrition starts young, and you're never too young to start learning. So I really enjoy teaching kids about best nutrition practices. I picked up a book in 2020. As I said, we'd just come out of lockdowns, was still going on. I think we'd come out of lockdown on the Gold Coast and the library had opened up. And in the pile of books, there was a novel called Fearless, and it was about Freya Hofmeister, the German woman who paddled around Australia in 2009 and broke the world records, beating the blokes before her to do so. I read that book, and from a chapter in, though I was reading about sharks and crocodiles stalking Freya, I had a gut feeling, which I hadn't had since I was 12 years old, that the paddle was something I needed and wanted to do. And whether it was a sense of adventure or, you know, just a longing to break out of that Groundhog Day feeling of COVID, I'm not sure. It definitely was a selfish reason of wanting to break a world record. But I took off in December 2021 after a year of planning. My husband and I investing our life savings, selling 2 cars, desperately scrambling for sponsorship. And 8 months later, I returned as a world record holder. And I wish I could put the names of the dozens or hundreds of people who helped me through that journey. It was never a solo mission. My crew were with me the whole time. And when I touched, you know, sunk my feet into the sand, basically 8 months later, after, you know, paddling for 100 kilometers out to sea each day, I remember reuniting with my family and friends and sponsors, and it felt like a real team effort. So I'm so grateful to Griffith for the support of my sport through the years, and to everyone who helped me complete that journey. And now I'm working as a dietitian. I travel as a corporate speaker, and I've just released a book. And those are things that I never ever thought I was capable of, but I know what can happen when you're empowered and inspired by a role model at a young age. So lovely to be here with you today.
Thanks, Bonnie. Great to hear from you, and we'll post the link to your book in the chat later on, so people who want to read that. I have read it and absolutely loved it, and just am in awe of what you experienced and the grit and determination you showed to make that journey. We're now going to introduce our final panel member for today, Sarah Parker. Sarah is the 2022 Australian Rural Community Leader of the Year and holds numerous roles in Australia's agricultural space. Sarah, your journey post-Griffith took an immediate change. So tell us more about that and how your days are now spent supporting your local communities.
Thank you, and lovely to join you all. I'm actually joining everybody from Ballarat on Dja Dja Wurrung country. So I graduated from Griffith University with a Bachelor of Leisure Studies, and that actually eventually led to me becoming a dairy farmer a little while later. So I actually graduated from that degree because it was a degree that had a wide area of opportunities for me, and it caught my interest because it covered things like environmental science, working with people, communities, and connecting with networks. The day after I actually was given my piece of paper and walked across the stage, I was actually involved in a really bad car accident, and my left leg was badly damaged to the point where they say there was a little bit of an argument between my father and the doctors as to whether that leg was viable or not. That leg is viable, but I still have problems with it. During that time, I actually had to relearn to walk and do most things. So my graduation wasn't typical of where you go out and find your dream job and move straight into a career. I spent 6 months on crutches, strengthening that leg. And during that time, I was introduced to my husband, Raymond, through one of my mutual students and a friend that I met through the Bachelor of Leisure Studies, Renee. And my husband at that time was a country boy that had come to the city to follow a career in the automotive industry. And usual story, you meet, you get married and buy a house. So if we can just skip through some of the slides, I'll just talk quickly about that first slide. That's me in high school, typical inner city high school, Brisbane State High. Myself at the United Nations, so I've been there twice representing Australia, and then myself in the dairy. So there are probably 3 key photos that when I look at them, I think about them, they all involve some level of leadership, but they also involve some level of support and working with people, which is a key theme that my career path has followed since graduating from Griffith University. So if we can just jump to the next slide. And that's my husband and myself in the dairy. It's a rare occasion these days because I'm usually gone from the farm, but I have been in there sometimes. And then the next slide afterwards. So I'm by no means a natural farmer. It doesn't come naturally to me. We actually moved 20 years ago this year from Brisbane to the inner city, to the Goulburn Valley, which is in Shepparton, in the lower end of what's called the Murray-Darling Basin. In my realm of possibilities, I never dreamed of being a dairy farmer. I never even knew or thought about how important food, resilience, sustainability was. But to this day, I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I have had and that my husband in a way provided me with by taking on his dream of owning a dairy farm and moving at a time when the opportunities were there. So we packed up with the house, everything we owned, we put in a trailer, we moved with a dog and a 4-wheel drive ute, and that was it, and landed in the Goulburn Valley. Can we just move on to the next slide and then the one after that? And we started leasing a farm from people that were actually friends of his grandparents. So I should have known that one day I would be on a dairy farm. This was one of our first dates in an article that my mother found in a newspaper. There used to be a Dairy Alive. Brianna might remember it. It was a activity done and an event done for people to reconnect with the dairy industry. And that was myself patting a red cow in Brisbane on the lawns of the local museum. I never thought that it would be a lifetime of patting cows post leaving Brisbane and getting a degree from Griffith University. So if we can move on again, please. So we bought a house and sold a house to move. Next one, thank you. And along the way, there's been a lot of challenges, but a lot of things that I've learned, and I suppose people often reflect on, and it'll come through as we have our discussions today. I've actually been grateful and had opportunities that all involve people. And that goes back to the degree I did. The leisure management degree or leisure studies involved connecting and working with people across all levels. So I actually worked as a case manager in Brisbane for people with brain injuries and acquired brain injuries, and I also worked in children's services. So I spent 5 years as the children's coordinator for the PCYC, otherwise known as the Police Citizens Youth Clubs, in Logan, Woodridge, Beenleigh. And in that time, I actually learnt some of the most important lessons in my life, and they were around resilience, working with people regardless of where they come from, you don't make assumptions with the people you work with. You're actually there to work together, and also the importance of teamwork. The people I worked with in those places, previous roles before I moved to the country and moved to the dairy industry, are the people that gave me the skills, the knowledge, the aptitude, and probably even the attitude to approach life with a positive view and to always work with what you've got and always ensure that you're bringing along everybody with you. So that's probably just some of those key lessons learnt. And the slide after that, please. Obviously the move. And can we just flip through? In the agricultural industry, and Brianna would know, a lot of things revolve around animals, but they also revolve around people. And when you work with people, your soft skills are some of the most important skills that you take into those industries. And the soft skills that I took from my degree and then from working with children and working with people with acquired brain injury and disability are the skills that probably were the most important when we moved. And they were skills where you look at situations and you look at what you're working with, the resources you have and the people that you're working with, and you always look at it as an opportunity for learning, an opportunity to make change, and an opportunity to connect and make a real difference. And obviously our other two speakers have made a huge difference in a lot of lives. They actually make me feel like that working in the world of cows and a few farmers is probably not a lot, and you don't make a lot of changes. But a lot of the changes that I've probably made aren't changes that make headlines, and they're not actually changes about me. They're changes that have been made with a team of people working together. And I think that's probably the key message that I'll leave there before we dive in to having a look at our other topics and other discussion themes today, is that when you work in leadership, and particularly in rural areas and within agriculture, you work as a team, and you may be the person that is out the front talking and speaking and representing, but behind you come the people that have often developed a plan, developed the key messages, and they're giving up just as much time and energy as you are towards whatever cause you're working for and whatever difference you're wanting to make in the world.
Thanks, Sarah. It's really, really great to hear. We've got three completely different, diverse speakers here joining us today, all different paths and on different journeys, but all so passionate and contributing to their local communities. So that's something we're going to look at now, just briefly, is around volunteering and how that has helped each of your professional journeys, if it's something you've approached strategically, and how you look at saying yes to an opportunity. So Brianna, we might go to you first. I know you're currently holding some meaty volunteering roles, both globally, nationally, and then all the way down to your local sporting club. So just love to get your thoughts on volunteering.
Thank you. Well, volunteering makes the world go round. In short, it is just such a privilege to be able to contribute to local community through that notion of volunteering. And I've only recently been appointed to the Volunteering Australia board, but it's really opened my eyes to the broader volunteering ecosystem. And it doesn't matter whether you are a parent who goes and does reading classes in kindergarten, whether or not you're helping in the tuck shop, whether or not you are volunteering at a local sporting club, whether or not you are a wildlife conservationist. That notion of being able to give back and contribute to community because it aligns to your values and your purpose is phenomenal. And I think one of the things that's concerning me enormously when I look at rates of volunteering in Australia is, if we go back to 2010, we had 1 in 3 adults volunteering in some capacity in a formal volunteering sense. It then reduced to 1 in 4. And the reality is at the moment that we've got 1.86 million less volunteers in the community right now than we did pre-COVID. And I understand why completely, because the number of people who might have been in a financial position to only work part-time, or perhaps of not been working in formal employment, they're now needing to work. They can't give up their time for free. They need to be recompensed for the hours that they're contributing, but it's having a really significant knock-on effect. And I know, even speaking to my mother who lives in the Redlands area of Brisbane, she now volunteers in a local school canteen because there's no more parents and grandparents available to actually be contributing that incredibly important role in a school canteen around nutrition, around healthy eating, and the knock-on effects of that. For me, volunteering was a really significant gap when I graduated from Griffith Uni, because I had invested so much time and energy into my degree and into that search for the elusive full-time job that's going to be amazing and set you on a career path. I'd lost that connection back into community, and I wasn't feeling it as strongly as I should have. And for me, it wasn't until I applied to do the Australian Rural Leadership Program, where there was a really pointed question about how I invest in and give back to community, that I suddenly realised I was given the kick in the pants I needed about the fact I wasn't doing it anymore. So for me, it's always been a really conscious effort to think about how I can be contributing and in what ways. I think, frankly, it's a cop-out to talk about being too busy for volunteering. I absolutely appreciate if it's for financial reasons and it makes it really difficult, but making time, whether that be if you've got sporty kids, instead of just sitting in the car, drinking coffee, doing whatever while your kid's on the pitch, go out there and volunteer. Do the wretched job of scoring at cricket, be the MC at soccer, contribute in some way, because not only are you giving back and making sure sport, which is so reliant on volunteers, is going to thrive, but your kids, even if they're teens and say they don't need you there, they need you there, they want you there, they want to see you participating. So there's so many ways to be able to do that. And I know quite often they'll see capable people coming. I know when my children started primary school and our outside school hours care committee saw me coming and said, well, we can't have an USH if we don't have a voluntary committee, and we can't have a committee without a secretary, and you look perfect. And I went, we need an USH. But there is always a way to contribute. And I think it doesn't matter which industry you're in. And Sarah highlighted it, Bonnie exemplifies it. This is about finding activities that bring you joy, that align to your purpose, and the immeasurable benefits of volunteering are the reason that we have so many successful organisations. And I think for any current students or alumni that are watching today, it's really easy to find out how you can give back. And when you're talking in the charity landscape like we are at Food Bank, to give time, talent or treasure is a really great way of making a tangible difference to the lives who really need a hand up right now.
Thanks, Brianna. We will go to Bonnie shortly about sport, but first we'll go to Sarah, who spoke very humbly about herself. I think I've counted over 20 different volunteer roles on your LinkedIn profile, and I know you don't have them all listed there. So Sarah, please talk to us about how volunteering in your communities impacts you and why you do the things that you do.
When I moved down from Brisbane to the Goulburn Valley, one of the things that I learned very quickly was if you're going to make a life in a rural area, you need to connect with people. And one of the things that volunteering allows you to do is connect. But I also looked at it, and a wise old farmer in his 80s said to me, volunteer in something that you've got the capacity to do well. But remember that it doesn't have to be endless hours. It could be your skill sets. So one of the first things that I volunteered was as a treasurer of a small farming branch. And that enabled me to go to a meeting once or twice a year, but also do treasury reports. So it isn't also necessary about leaving the house and meeting with large groups of people. Volunteering can be about the skill sets you use. I also, volunteering, especially when things are tough in rural areas, it helps you connect with people, and it does actually help your own mental health. So being able to talk to people, give back, the best thing to do, I've often found with the challenges that we've had on our farm and in our lives, is to do something for someone else when you're really struggling actually gives you a boost, helps the endorphins and all of the other happy hormones circulate, but it moves you out of your own situation and gives you perspective. So examples that I've done have been local show committees, helping behind the scenes with different events, that sort of thing. And obviously my first sort of dive into leadership was a shove in the centre of the shoulders and saying, you're now the branch president for a farming group, which was like, oh, really? Okay, I guess I am. And I've had some amazing mentors, and being a female leader, most of my mentors have actually been men. So I went from being a junior project officer to a CEO at a program called Murray Dairy, which is a regional development program of Dairy Australia. and that was Jeff Hodges, the former chair of Dairy Australia, who's very supportive, challenged me in every way you can possibly imagine, but also provided me with opportunities to learn on the job and to challenge my skill sets and use those important skill sets that are there but you mightn't be using. Different volunteer experiences in the rural areas are available depending on what your passion is. My husband, for example, is a rural firefighter. So there was 2 weeks ago where he milked cows and then went out and fought fires every night for 4 or 5 hours a night, then come home and gets up at 4 a.m. to milk the cows again. And I was gone for that week, and that's his passion. He also sits on a committee that looks at genetic merit of cattle as we try and improve the breed. Yeah, it's about your passion, but also about your skill sets and where you can make the most effective change, I think. And remember, you don't have to leave home if you are uncomfortable leaving home. There's some really great opportunities to volunteer time and skills.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. I think that's really important too. Often, volunteering can get you out of, I guess, being there on the sideline and talking. If you've got a job out there umpiring or whatever it is, you can focus on doing that. And there's a great kids book. I can't think of the title now, but it's around filling your cup, and that you can't take from others. You have to fill your cup, and then you can give to others, which talks around if you're feeling down, often helping others will give you that boost you need. Bonnie, I think it's no surprise that sport certainly wouldn't function without volunteers, but maybe you could talk to us around, I guess, your own volunteering experience and you've obviously yourself through your trip had a lot of volunteers step up for you. So if you could talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So I've been fortunate enough to have been volunteering since the age of 14. So within Surf Life Saving, you get your surf rescue certificate and then your bronze medallion at the age of 16. And we absolutely need surf lifesavers on the beach to keep our, swimmers safe. Anyone who's ever been to a beach where there are flags up, that's the surf lifesavers keeping you safe. The absolute gold standard would be to have no drownings on the beach, and tragically we do have drownings every year across all states across Australia. And to have been doing patrols since the age of 14, as the ladies alluded to, I feel like I've gotten even more back than I've given. And for any of the students or alumni, I think that's important to note, that you get so much back from volunteering. In Surf Life Saving at the age of 14, I was interacting with people of all ages. I was learning to communicate with members of the public. As you get into your later teens, you're given the opportunity for leadership roles, to actually become a vice patrol captain or having to step up as the captain, if someone's unable to make it. So that's a really rare situation that you would actually have the opportunity for a leadership role at the age of 18 or 19. There's then the coaching aspect, and coaching has been sort of a vessel for me to be able to mentor young girls and boys coming through in the sport, and not just improve their skills as a lifesaver or competitor, but, as I say, help them to be better humans, and help them at a time of their life at 13, 14, 15, where there are so many barriers to sport. It is a really challenging age at school. These kids are finding out who they are. The girls are going through different developmental, challenges, and to be there and to have them come down the beach and stand there and coach them and watch them dive into the water, it's like all their worries disappear for that sort of time they're there with us. And, they do compete. We do have to make really hard team selection choices at times, but what we come back to is making them better humans. And I'm so fortunate to have been involved in Surf Life Saving since the age of 5, really, and have volunteers have helped me as age managers on the barbecues, raising money, and that role modelling starts from such a young age. So watching my parents assisting, watching my friends' parents helping out where they could. Even though we didn't have much money, there was always something to give. And I think I'll always be involved in that. In Surf Life Saving, there's something to do for someone who's 95 years old, like sweeping the sheds or down there, on patrol, watching on the beach, mentoring the young ones. And it's something I'm incredibly proud of and will continue to do. And you're absolutely right. Throughout my trip, Nicole, I would have had probably 100 people at different times who came on the catamaran to watch me at night time, shining torches out to the side of the boat, looking for crocodiles, sailing that boat, preparing the food, helping me with recovery. There were numerous roles, and without those people, I wouldn't have got a world record, but I certainly wouldn't have got home safely, most importantly. And, you know, it's 40 kilometres when you stand on the beach and look to the horizon. We were about 100k out most days. At the furthest point, it was 500 kilometres out to sea. So some of these crew members had to get over their fear of sharks in the ocean, come out in the middle of the ocean, help me to achieve that goal that I wanted to. And I can tell you, when I got that certificate, I called all of them and we reminisced about the paddle and them having given up their 8 months to come with me. I promised them an adventure of a lifetime. I hope that I delivered, because they delivered in spades back to me in what they gave. And it's lifelong memories and friendships that can come from volunteering.
Awesome. Thanks, Bonnie. That is wonderful. And it is, as you mentioned, those leadership opportunities, particularly when you're starting out your career or wanting to change careers. Volunteering is a great way to boost your CV as well, from a personal advancement opportunity as well, where you may not have access to those types of roles or opportunities in your workplace, but that is something you can seek in a volunteering capacity to really test those skills or test that area you want to find out if you are interested in it or if it is a passion as well. So that's something for all our alumni to keep in mind as well as they're looking to progress their careers. Obviously, in each of the roles that you are doing, you have a lot of responsibility for others. And so taking care of yourselves, obviously, is the first step to being able to help others. So we're just going to touch on, before we open up for some live questions, around your tips for supporting mental health and also nutrition, because this is an area where you all come at it from a slightly different angle and really eager to hear what you have to say. So something either that works personally for you, or advice that you give to others, or ways that people can individually contribute in their communities. So Sarah, we're going to start with you for this one. So obviously working with farmers, we know that mental health in that space it can be a really big challenge. Also producing the significant portion of food for the entire country to keep us all healthy. So yeah, I'd love to just hear some tips from you from a nutrition or mental health perspective.
It's actually interesting. I just attended a national roundtable on mental health and wellness for farmers yesterday in Melbourne. So there's a saying that without a farmer, you'd be naked, hungry, and sober. And that's probably quite a funny one that one of the old timers said yesterday. And I think that's quite ironic. I think as a dairy farmer, we are very focused on nutrition with our cows. So our cows actually wear collars that provide us with up-to-date biometric data for every individual in the herd that is beamed back to our phones via the World Wide Web and everything else, and satellites. We also have a nutritionist that works with cows. And as you know, you look at the cows, you sometimes forget about yourself. So one of the things that I've always looked at, and being a type 1 diabetic, diet and exercise, you're very well aware of what your body can and can't do, is taking time out and learning to say no. When I say no to leadership opportunities, I don't just say no, I actually refer on. So provide the next generation or the next person, or have a list of people that you actually refer the opportunity to. So it's not a say no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's a say no and say, look, have you considered X, Y, and Z for this position? I think they might be interested, or shoulder tap for a position before it comes your way so you don't get asked to do it. With mental health and wellness, we hit a really low point on the farm in 2016. Everyone would remember the talk around the milk price crash. And farmers were actually having to pay money back to milk companies, and we're getting some farmers were getting the equivalent of 7 cents, 10 cents a litre for their milk. And it was costing on average about 50 to 60 cents to make. On top of that, we hit a very wet period on farm and had 6 months of knee-deep mud. So you had low milk price and mud. And my husband and myself reached a point where we actually needed to get off farm and go and do something. So we actually go rock and roll dancing. And that is our passion. It's when you're dancing, you can't think of anything else but where you're putting your feet, because if you think of something else and start worrying about budgets or cows or anything else, you end up in a pile on the floor. So sometimes it's really good to take a step out of the industry where you work in, volunteer in, live in, and do something completely different. And we did that thinking there were no farmers in the room. Well, they came out of the woodwork 6 months later. That's probably one of the lessons in life. We also choose to actually connect and continue to reconnect with our friends from the city. So actually having a chat to someone that's not part of your industry and someone that's often keen to learn about what you do, talking about what you do brings back the passion to it, but also enables you the opportunity to educate people and talk a little bit about where you're at and where you're going.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sarah. I love that, referring it forward. That's such a wonderful idea, and something that you do when you're considering options. Bonnie, obviously when you were travelling around Australia, you had to let your nutrition fall by the wayside at different times due to accessibility of the food or your ability to keep it in your body. And you obviously also had to dig so deep to keep going every day and to work through some, legitimately life-threatening situations. So what's some advice or anything that you would like to share, or something that you share with your clients today?
Yeah, absolutely. On a personal note, the first challenge of my trip was actually the 15 kilograms I had to put on in the 6 months leading in. So the first test, of the paddle or the circumnavigation was putting vanity to the side and doing that and sort of reprogramming my brain and knowing that that was okay. And that was part of my preparation. And credit to my husband, my friends and family, no one ever said anything negative about that. And I think there can be this sort of fine line as an athlete. There's well-known body image issues that can occur. And I think it's another important note that with the, social media and the influence there, if there are any athletes out there, to fuel your body like an athlete, not an influencer. And that's sort of something we really try and instill in our clients, our athlete clients particularly, because there can be a lot of misleading information online. So if you're unsure, even if you don't do sport or you're more of a recreational athlete as such, get some expert guidance. That's what we're there for. We never ever give the same plan to two people. It is always tailored. I did try to take my own advice through the paddle. I had the perfect plan with nutrition, with how many carbohydrates and proteins I'd have, and then the seasickness hit and all I could hold down was Hydralyte. So having to accept the ugliness and the messiness and that it wasn't going to be perfect, that was a big learning curve for me. And that was a growth area, knowing that there were factors I couldn't control. But when I came to shore, I had to go into a caloric surplus and get as many calories in as possible, which was super fun, eating lots of donuts and croissants. But I think just having a really healthy approach to diet and knowing that you can treat yourself, you can have balance, but also taking a moment, as the women today have said, to have a bit of gratitude and know where our food comes from, and know that the work that goes into that from the farmers and all of the steps it takes to actually get it on the shelf, and seeking fresh produce out as well, and knowing the benefits. As I said, a dietitian can guide you to give you that incentive as to why we should eat certain foods. And sometimes when you know the why, it makes it a lot easier. On the note of self-care, I had to lead a team throughout this paddle in a male-dominated environment as a young female, and the sailing industry, I dealt with all male skippers, male crew, and I'd never had to lead properly before. As a young athlete, we're very good at listening, we're very coachable, we're good at doing what we're told. I had to step up as a leader on this paddle, and at first it was uncomfortable. But I found that by having my network around me, and whether that was my sisters or my friends or, even male friends as well, to have those conversations prior, voice my doubts, know the rebuttals that might be coming back, and to go into that meeting feeling confident. Keep your network close, those people you can tell absolutely anything to, and create a safe space where they can tell anything to you as well. That is incredibly important when it comes to mental fitness. And I guess my last note is immersion in nature and the importance of disconnecting. And it is okay to put your phone down and close the laptop and get out to the beach or the middle of the bush or just outside and experience nature and reflect and remind yourself to be proud of what you've done as well. The world won't stop without you. Take that moment for yourself and you're going to be better for everyone else.
Thanks so much, Bonnie. So many great tips there for us to share. And as you say, yeah, the passion as well too that the farmers put in. I didn't reference again the nutritionists for the cows and the real-time reporting, things that we don't even think about. But yeah, some great tips there, getting out to nature and looking after yourself and seeking that advice, even if you are not planning on running an Olympic race. You still want to live a long, happy, healthy life, and knowing the best tools to do that is really important. Brianna, obviously for you, nutrition and mental health concerns are things that are daily challenges that you are seeing. So what would you like to share with the audience around what people can do personally or how they can contribute in their local community to supporting others?
Well, I might just tackle the personal front before the professional, and certainly from my perspective, what Bonnie just said couldn't resonate with me more closely. We got a rescue dog straight after the Black Summer bushfires in 2020, which was me apologising to my children for working 30 of the 31 days of January through those Black Summer bushfires. But she has been the best addition to our life because of the fact that each and every day she needs a walk twice a day, every day. She's a staffy, that's non-negotiable, which means I'm getting out twice a day, every day, no matter what. And I loudly and proudly spend an hour, and it's written into my diary, visible to my entire team, in the middle of the day. So during work hours, if I'm not working in the office and I'm working from home, I do an hour where I'm walking down by the creek, I'm taking calls, or I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm doing meetings, but I'm being active, I'm connecting with nature. The dog's getting walked. It makes me feel better. And I just feel like I'm balancing things better. And I think if there are options to weave exercise and connectedness with nature into your day, do it loudly and proudly. And the other thing that I absolutely role model in our workplace is the noisy exit, because nothing would frustrate me more than people quietly saying, oh, I've just got to duck off to a meeting, a nondescript meeting that I'm not going to mention that may or may not exist. Tell me that you are leaving early to go to your child's school assembly. Tell me you're going to do soccer coaching. Tell me the amazing stuff that you're doing that's going to fill your cup and bring you joy. Because if you are an employee who feels valued and understood, and the workplace actually acknowledges and celebrates the way you're contributing to community, all the better for it. So I love the noisy exit. I love leaving at 2:30 in the afternoon and going, I'm heading home to walk the dog. I'll be back online in an hour. Here we go. So noisy exit and role modeling, nothing better than it. The other thing I want to talk about from a professional point of view, this notion of nutrition is so critically important. And what many may not realise is that at Foodbank, it's not just about providing food relief in an environment of you get what you get and you don't get upset. We proactively source healthy, culturally appropriate food. We have a huge focus on sourcing fresh produce, and that's difficult and it's costly and it is hard to do, but it's the right thing to do. And we need to acknowledge that in Australia, we produce enough food to feed the population 3 times over, yet we've got 3.7 million households who at some point in the last 12 months have struggled to put a meal on the table. So we're really proud to partner with farmers and manufacturers and retailers to rescue fresh produce that may not make it to market for whatever reason. We love the bananas that are too bendy and the tomatoes that are the wrong colour and the watermelons that are too big, because they're providing nutrients and nutrition that are so important. And I think a really important tip, particularly for those who are working in the nutrition space, is to check your assumptions about people's capacity to be able to afford healthy, nutritious food. Because right now in the cost of living crisis, we've never had a higher level of demand for food relief. And we've had reports of school children feeling shamed when they're talking in high school about what healthy eating looks like, because they're struggling to get access to fresh fruit and vegetables. Unless mum and dad are going to the supermarket and making themselves available of the free fruit for kids, as an example, it's really difficult for them to source those products. So we need to find a balance between nutrition education and how critically important it is, but also making sure that particularly children, but that everyone feels like there's an option. And it's one of the reasons that we do focus so heavily on working at the farm gate around rescuing particularly fresh produce, but any products on farm. And truly, we couldn't do what we do at Foodbank without our farmers. They do just such an extraordinary job.
Thanks so much, Brianna. That was some more wonderful tips there. And we've got some great questions coming through. So we've just got under 10 minutes to go. So we're going to see how many of these questions we can get through. So the first question I'm going to throw to, I think just to Brianna, is around, it's from Joe. It says, I've been a volunteer for many years and it certainly helped me develop skills that could then be on my professional CV. Can you provide any advice on how to represent volunteering in a CV or job application that's powerful to a recruiter?
I think language sometimes is a great way to get through it. You may not want to call it volunteering. You may have a reference in your CV to paid employment and unpaid employment, because let's be honest, that's what it is. It's actually incredibly valuable. You're just not charging for the hours that you're contributing. So language is one way, but also to really put up in lights in your LinkedIn profile. And, you know, we've got a great example in Sarah where she celebrates and recognises and values the contribution that she's making to community through volunteering. So I think loudly and proudly celebrate the unpaid work that you are contributing to community and the impact and the value of that. I think that's probably the shortest answer I can give given time.
No, that's okay. Thank you. And the next question, Sarah, I'm going to come to you for that one. So it's from Nicola, saying, talking around skills, knowledge and experience as being transferable. And so Nicola came into academia later in life after a long career in nursing. However, what I find hard is convincing others of the value of previous skills or experience for them to acknowledge. What advice might you give on how to convey that in a different environment? So I'm sure often in farming, you never know what you're going to be doing from one day to the next. But so what are some ways to show those transferable skills?
I actually think you need to identify those skills as well. I probably was being too generalist around transferable skills. Some areas that I would have transferred across is case management, marketing and promotion, community and networking. Were examples going from a childcare background to a rural environment. So you need to identify those skills. And also, look, we talk about ChatGPT or one of the AI type programs. I actually have often put what I do as a volunteer, some of the jobs and tasks into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has translated them into the modern language that we use for those skill sets. But it's also it's experience. So as an nurse that's probably trained in the system where you worked in a hospital and attended education, you've actually got frontline experience that you can list down in terms of management, connection to patients, understanding the operating environment, all of those sort of terms that the students that you're studying with are yet to experience.
Awesome, thank you. Bonnie, we'll come to you now. So this is an anonymous question that's come in. How do you mentally keep going or pick yourself up after continuous resistance to ideas or change?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we faced so many challenges in the 12 months leading into this paddle. I've heard every single reason why someone can't sponsor you. There were so many times it just all felt too much and we wanted to throw it in. But having those couple of people in your corner to sit there and sit down and plan and adapt, I think adaptability is the biggest key. I guess it's now a strength that maybe never was. I used to see things very black and white and have an A plan and not want to change that. We had to adapt our plans so many times. Even on the trip when we had a plan for 120 kilometres, that soon had to become 150 kilometres because the bay wasn't safe. So sort of that adaptability I now carry into other areas in my life. And I think the ocean has taught me that as well, in that you've got to plan for the best, almost expect the worst, but prepare to adapt. And I think having my network of 3 people around me, and I very clearly know who those are, and at Gotcha for Life, we sit there and get the children to write down their village and write those names so that they know. Chatting with those people, picking up the phone and having those calls and being willing to change the plan, that's important. But it can feel like some days nothing's going your way. I received 21 rejections before I got a yes in sponsorship on that paddle. It was a life-changing yes, and it was all I needed. But if I would have given up on the 15th or 16th or 17th no, I never would have got to that 22nd time. So keep going and change your plan and get feedback as well. Ask the experts, you know. I would have researched, you know, I went through skippers, super yacht captains, about 10 degrees of separation to get to the world's leading meteorologists to advise me on the currents and the wind patterns. So seek out an expert. It might be through a couple of degrees of separation. Get the feedback so you actually know what you need to change and be prepared to adapt the plan.
Awesome, thank you. And by complete coincidence, our next question for Brianna is an example of that. So it's from Kimberly, who's a graduate of the same degree and is now a social environmental planning lecturer here at Griffith, specialising in planning for local food systems. And she said she's really inspired by Foodbank's efforts to source fresh fruit and vegetables. And can you talk quickly on how you access these foods and manage their logistics, given the foods are perishable?
You've hit the nail on the head around that perishability piece, because it's one thing to produce enough food to feed our population 3 times over. It's another ball game to be able to move that food to the places that it's needed quickly. And I had the great pleasure of being in Darwin last week, opening the new Foodbank South Australia and Northern Territory food hub in Yarrawonga out near Palmerston. And to say that fresh produce is in huge demand but incredibly difficult to transport and source is putting it mildly. Long and short of it is, we need powerful relationships with farmers and peak bodies so that farmers know who we are and the fact that we can actually take donated fresh produce and so on. But right now, the taxation system is not where it needs to be, because at the moment if you are donating a product to Foodbank, the benefit is no different to dumping it. So a farmer wanting to donate to Foodbank, it's actually cheaper for them to plough the product in or to dump it than it is to pick it, pack it and transport it. Through a national food donation tax incentive, we can actually incentivise the donation of these products. So I think there's some really sensible changes that we could make to government legislation and policy that would change the policy settings, but also transport and logistics support. We love pro bono and low bono transport support through some of Australia's biggest trucking and transport companies. We leverage it each and every day, but we always need more of it. And if there's one product that we can never get enough of, it's fresh produce. And we know from last year's Foodbank Hunger Report that fresh produce and protein are the first 2 things to drop off people's shopping list when they are facing tough times and they're trying to buy fresh fruit and trying to buy food and groceries. So that's the 2 areas that we really focus on, in addition to personal care items like sanitary care, which is also in huge demand for obvious reasons.
Thanks so much, Brianna. We're almost at time, so I've just got one last question we'll go to. I'm going to have to ask you each to give a 1-word answer for it. So the question is from Joe. So I'm going to go to Bonnie first, then Sarah, then Brianna. So our question from Joe is, what is your key tip, I'm going to say keyword, on maintaining focus and attaining goals in a noisy work environment where you are pulled in lots of directions? So Bonnie, I know you've got a million things going on even just today alone. So what's your 1-word tip on getting it done?
Break it into sections and prioritise. Prioritise. There you go. There's one.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Sarah.
Passion. Be driven by your passion.
Awesome. Thank you. And Brianna?
3 words: embrace the chaos.
Embrace the chaos. Love it. Thank you, everyone. We're right on 1:30, so we're going to have to call it here today. We've shared a lot of links today in the chat, but we will summarise those and share them again in our wrap-up email out to you all. There's been lots of questions there on wanting to connect with others or seek mentoring. So I'm proud to let everyone know that Griffith does offer an alumni to alumni mentoring program that's free and accessible to all Griffith University graduates. So we'll share the details for that, and I really encourage you to go in there, participate. You can be a mentee or a mentor, both at the same time or at different stages as you're seeking different things that you're wanting to connect with. So you can just arrange a one-off meeting with fellow alumni to look for advice or to offer advice. So really encourage you to take advantage of that. We've got more webinars coming later in the year, so if you have any suggestions, then please feel free to send them through of topics that you would like to hear us talk about. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to our 3 speakers today, Brianna, Bonnie and Sarah. You're 3 outstanding women, and we've barely scratched the surface on your journey so far, and can't wait to follow your journey along as you continue to achieve amazing things personally and professionally in your communities. So your level of influence is just outstanding. We're so grateful for the time that you've volunteered with us today. So thank you very much. We're going to leave you today with a video. It's got 3 alumni in it announcing, so Griffiths recently changed the name of the Honours College to the Student Academy of Excellence, which will continue to provide support for our high achieving students. So we just thought we'd leave that with you today as you all head off back into your day. But thank you very much for joining us, and we can't wait to see you again soon. So thank you.
Being a member of the Academy did give me a sense of identity and a sense of self-belief. Kind of made me realise what I was capable of, and just seeing other students reaching their potential, that was quite empowering.
The Student Academy of Excellence is a community of high-achieving students who come from different backgrounds, different passions, different career aspirations, but together we all try and push each other to our limits.
You get a lot of support being in the Student Academy of Excellence, and you also get access to a lot of amazing opportunities.
One of the big things is to set you up with a mentor. She would help guide me through my academic studies, but also just someone there to listen and give advice.
There's also international opportunities. I went with the UN in Thailand, learning about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
It gave me the opportunity to go on conferences in Prague, in the Czech Republic, in Geneva, in Switzerland. It definitely helped me to get internships and helped me in my pathway into law.
It's been a great opportunity to meet people who push you further, who inspire you.
The Student Academy of Excellence has allowed me to build friendships and really make lasting relationships while I'm here, and I think those will continue to serve me even when I graduate university.
It made my experience so much more fulfilling at university.
Do it. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Really take on every opportunity.
It's been 100% the most rewarding thing that I've done at university.
It's not an exaggeration to say that I think it changed the course of my life.